Are we able to get the recording or share the recording after?
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely send that over.
Sorry. You can close it the whole way.
Alrighty, so I think we can get started. So welcome everyone to our first speaker series for the semester. And like we mentioned at our kickoff and informational sessions, our topic is going to be digital health. And we have three wonderful speakers here with us today who I'll introduce in a minute. To everyone who is new to ViTAL, welcome. We are the Healthcare Innovation Club here at Northeastern, and our mission statement is to help inspire, connect, and create. If you want to learn a little bit more of the details of that, I really welcome you to watch our kickoff event video, which is on YouTube and it's shared through our newsletter as well as our social media accounts. We are basically an interdisciplinary group of Northeastern students, and we really enjoy and want to learn more about healthcare innovation, which involves growing in knowledge as well as networking and just skills outside of the classroom. And we really like to harp on the fact that we're very interdisciplinary and we're very focused on trying to bring in people from all different realms so that we can learn as much as we can. So in that pursuit, we are delving into digital health this semester and also the rest of this year. And so I wanted to start off by kind of saying a little bit about digital health because I know it's a very broad topic and a broad theme. And there's not really a concrete definition to it. And I know a lot of times when we think of digital health, we can think of it in the traditional sense of medical devices or wearable tech like we are today. But it can be as creative as teletherapy, apps that track wellness and well-being, and things of that nature. The list really just goes on and on. And as I was preparing for this and I wanted to make sure I kind of knew a little bit about it, I realized that even the Google definition of it is extremely broad. It's just the interconnection of the digital health realm with healthcare, and society to essentially just enhance efficiency of healthcare delivery and make medicine more personalized and precise. So in layman terms, just kind of make everyone's lives a little bit easier. However, I know that through all of this virtual world, and I know from at least the Northeastern student perspective, new flex and just trying to do virtual learning, there's definitely a lot of pickups with that. So it's interesting to kind of see both ends of it, to see how it definitely makes things a lot more easy and accessible, but it can also cause different issues that you weren't even considering. So with that, we're going to delve more into the more quote unquote traditional side of digital health, which is what people typically think of when you think of devices that might connect you in a more virtual setting, which is with wearable technology. So we have three leaders and educators who are very, very happy, who have agreed to come and speak with us today. We have Elizabeth Gazda from Embr Labs. We have Professor John Rachlin from right here at Northeastern. And we have Maneesh Sethi from Pavlok. So I'm going to hand it over to them to kind of give a little brief introduction of who they are, kind of where they got to where they are and how they did that, and their journeys in the medical field so far. And I'll let Liz start it off just because that's the order of the slide.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Elizabeth Gazda. I'm the current CEO of Embr Labs. I'm actually not one of the founders. It's a really interesting story about how I became the CEO of Embr Labs, which is the three male founders who started this company at MIT. Sorry guys, it's an MIT story. They built this business from the ground up out of a lab with the insight that you could hack the brain into feeling temperature in a different way. And they put the product on Kickstarter, very successful. And when they started selling directly from the website, direct to consumers, they decided that they had taken the company as far as they could go as technical founders. And so they actually hired a professional recruiter to source a CEO to help them run the company. And if you know anything about entrepreneurship, this rarely happens. You rarely have founders with the self-awareness to say, this is not a role for any one of us. And it's certainly even more rare that 3 male founders decide to hire a female CEO. So that's a little bit about why I'm there. I've been there for 2 years. My background is very diverse. I actually grew up on the West Coast. I went to UC Berkeley, and I studied internations. And soon after, I decided to go to Europe to get my MBA, because at that time, the only place you could get an international MBA was abroad. So those international programs did not exist in the United States. Soon after, I was hired by Philips in the Netherlands and held a couple global positions there. And then in 2000, I decided to come back to the United States, and Silicon Valley was maybe too far away from me then after living in Holland. So I settled in Boston, and I've worked for 2 of Boston's fastest growing companies, unicorns, they call them, in enterprise software and in mobile technology. And then I co-founded and founded companies myself. And so I have that founder spirit. And most recently co-founded a fintech company right before I joined Embr Labs. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi everyone, I'm John Rachlin. I'm a professor, assistant teaching professor in Corey College. I teach courses in databases, discrete math, and most recently a lot of data science courses, mainly Python programming. And well, my background is basically artificial intelligence. My first job out of grad school was working at the T.J. Watson Research Lab doing manufacturing research of all things. But when the human genome finally got sequenced, or at least there was a draft sequence of the human genome back around 2000, I got very interested in bioinformatics and picked up and moved to a small, to work with a small biotech in Texas, and continued working in the biotechnology and bioinformatics area. I eventually worked for a number of years at Sanofi Aventis, doing drug discovery and bioinformatics related work to drug discovery. And thereafter, I was for a number of years at Optum Analytics, where I was working on high performance tools to integrate diverse electronic medical record data. And then after that, I was at Fitbit for a short period of time before finally finding calling and coming to Northeastern University.
Maneesh, if you could give a little bit of background on yourself.
Hi. Hi, my name is Maneesh Sethi. I'm the founder of Pavlok. So my story is that I grew up in California, and I always had a lot of trouble getting stuff done. Tons of trouble with focus, tons of trouble with getting things done. And I went to college, and while I was at college, I started to notice it was weird that I would always get things done right at the last minute, right? Paper would be due at midnight, and somehow the paper was always done, and it was always done at 11:59, but it was always done. And then I left college and that stopped, right? I was like, I'm gonna start a blog. I'm gonna start doing these things. And then I started traveling and trying to write a blog. And my only goal was to write 2 articles a week. And I had literally nothing to do. And in 4 years, I maybe wrote 4 articles, like maybe 2 articles a month max. But that said, the articles started to get popular and I started to build a following. And the following was around this concept of a website where I would do 90-day experiments in new countries. So my readers would vote where I would go and what I would do in these countries. And so I did these experiments, like I lived in the wilderness for 30 days. I became a DJ in Berlin in 90 days. I started an NGO in India. That was really cool. But then I started doing a productivity series. I was like, it's BS that I can do these things, but I can't actually finish the stuff I start. The most legitimately easy thing of all time, right? For 2 hours a week when I'm in front of my computer, 8 hours a day. So I was like, well, how would I create an experiment around this? How can I get myself to be more productive? So I did this one experiment where I hired a girl just to follow me around, and every time I went on Facebook, she would slap me in the face. I wrote an article called Why I Hired a Slapper on Craigslist and How It Quadrupled My Productivity. Because in 4 days, I got more than 4 months of work done. And it wasn't about the slap. It was the fact that I had a human being next to me that I was working on a project with, where I would commit to doing something with her. And now it became more of a social experience, but also accountability, but also the threat did make a difference. And she did slap me a couple times. And so I posted this article online, and the next day I wake up to 81 missed phone calls, and I wake up to Oliver from NPR, and he's like, "Are you Maneesh, the guy who hired the slapper?" I was like, what happened? Turns out the word slapper means prostitute in the UK, and that was just a really good twist on the word for the Daily Mail. So they published that while I was sleeping. 8 hours later, it hit America, and I was getting calls from everybody. I was called by Anderson Cooper. I was all over. I was on I was interviewed for Jimmy Fallon, although that didn't happen till later. And then whatever. So it was really cool. I was really famous. And then 3 days later, nobody cared anymore. I was like, damn it, press cycles. How can I pull this back again? All right, what's the next logical step in getting slapped for going on Facebook? Obviously, I need to get an electric dog shock collar and get shocked every time I go on Facebook. Called up a friend. We went to Radio Shack, ripped apart dog shock collar, hooked it up, said, hey, wait, this is actually really interesting, because there's a million wearables out there that track what you do, but this one's actually changing what I do. Maybe there's something deeper here that's better than just a funny blog post. Maybe there's a way to actually use this product to really help people. And so in 2013, a company in Boston called Bolt, an incubator, decided to invest in my company and help me build it from the ground up. I had no clue what I was doing, no hardware experience, nothing at all. Ended up coming there, building the product. It became very popular before it was released. Then we were on Shark Tank. We were in the New York Times. I was on Jimmy Fallon, all this other stuff. Steve Harvey show was cool. And he's a funny guy. And then since then, what we've been doing is realizing the power of what we've been building and focusing on creating new products that actually solve the problems of the first ones. So at the end of the day, my name is Maneesh. I'm from California. I create wearable devices called Pavlok that mount to Apple Watches and help you change your habits. That's
Okay, I have to ask, Northern or Southern California?
Do you want to guess?
I would say Southern.
Well, I'm from Northern, I'm from Sacramento, and I'm from your alma mater's competitor, I'm from Stanford boy.
Stanford, okay, I forgive
Yeah, my sisters are Berkeley kids, so it's all right. We're all fair.
Alrighty, thank you all so much for giving us a little look into your lives. So I'm gonna just dive right into a very broad question, so take it as you will. But how would you define wearable technology and its effect on your life? And why do you find it important for today? And why should everyone kind of know more about wearable tech and invest in it in their personal lives? And Liz, I'll let you take it first, or if anyone else wants to tackle it.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about wearable tech is that it's possible. So we have a lot of young people on this call, but there was a time that anything you did with anything that was electronic had to be wired, right? And we didn't have, for example, the computing power that's now in this phone. Probably the first computer I worked on in college didn't even have this computing capacity. So that's the first thing I will say about it, is that we finally have the capability to wear something around that's very powerful. What I find compelling about it is the portability of the experience. So before we got on this call together, I was telling some of the other speakers that I had my own wearable, delightful moment today, because I was on a very early morning flight, strapped into a seat where the plane was just absolutely freezing. And I had no more clothes to throw on, but I did have my Embr Wave on, and I was able to immediately activate it in heating. And after 3 minutes of heating, it can hack my brain into feeling 5 degrees warmer. So you can imagine that if I felt like it was 65, and after 3 minutes, it was able to make me feel like it was 70, that is a profound change. And as I was cold and trying to concentrate on what I was working on, the colder I got, I went into a stress cycle. So I'm cold, I'm stressed, my shoulders start moving up around my ears, I'm getting tight, and that becomes a classic fight or flight stress cycle where your autonomic nervous system is getting involved. And what our device is able to do is interrupt that stress cycle with a temperature sensation. So now I'm talking about a very real temperature situation where I was too cold, but our technology is also very appropriate for things like sleep or stress, menopausal hot flashes, even motion sickness.
I would just
So,
add, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
please, no, please go,
No, I
John.
was just going to suggest that one other significant element here is just the continuity of the monitoring itself. Portability, absolutely, but because it's portable, it also enables just continuous monitoring. There was this funny YouTube video that came out some years ago about Fitbit, and the fact that by virtue of the fact that people were wearing Fitbits during the night and doing basically continuous monitoring of their sleep cycles, that Fitbit, of all companies, had now basically conducted the world's largest sleep study ever conducted. They had basically produced a sleep study with something like 6 billion hours of sleep data, and so this ability then to continuously monitor also then perhaps even if the fidelity of the detection is maybe limited for whatever technical reasons, the fact that you have so many people using these devices and that you're monitoring it continuously means that maybe the statistical power to do data analysis is vastly improved.
No, John, that's a great point, because we noticed that our users were utilizing the device at night. And so that data insight taught us that we should probably come up with a fall asleep mode or an all night mode. That's exactly right. So for me, it's the power and the portability.
Sure. I'm actually curious what the people who are listening in, like what kind of focus they have, because like to me, wearable tech is really powerful from like what it means technologically, but also historically as like speed and what that means we can do with it coming up in the next 10 years are. But also from a business perspective, it has a few particular features that I have never discovered in any other business that is like different than others. So I'm curious what people want to know, or like what perspective you think that the people here care about. Is it business, is it historical, or is it tech?
Honestly, like any of them, like I mentioned earlier, we're a very interdisciplinary group of students. So I can speak for our e-board at least, because I know they're all here, but we come from backgrounds in engineering, neuroscience, health science, just like basically the general gamut of STEM, but also we are kind of based in business. So we do have a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship as well.
Got it, cool.
I'll just throw out what I think is one kind of interesting trend, which is we've seen in the last 10 years the rise of widespread use and adoption of electronic medical record systems. And what we're starting to see now is the integration of wearable device data into EMR systems. And this raises both technical challenges as well as, possibly some interesting privacy concerns. But I see possibly wearable technologies as being a way to maybe add another dimension to personalized medicine. In the same way that we would hope that understanding the genome and the diversity of single nucleotide polymorphisms from genome to genome across people might give insights about genetic variations and their implication for disease. So too, do we recognize that there are environmental factors that affect our health and well-being, and this ability then to integrate our device data into a singular electronic medical record, maybe combined with the standard diagnostics and lab results that you get from your doctor, as well as perhaps someday also a standard genetic profile, could raise some, I think, interesting possibilities for both data analysis and for well-being, and support this trend towards coordinated care, trying to identify, maybe patterns in people's lifestyle or behavior that could fend off disease.
John, yeah, one thing I've been noticing really powerfully about what we've been doing, and from a statistical / medical standpoint, I believe that given a continuous set of data, that correlation is more important than causation, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but here's what I mean. We created a very basic system where I essentially allowed our users to opt in with Apple Health, Aura, Sleep Ring, Fitbit, and any other your MyFitnessPal data. And we created just a basic regression table where we said, all right, based on your scale, your smart scale data, what correlates with you gaining weight and what correlates with you losing weight, right? And so the first guy we interviewed was trying to lose, he was trying to lose 50 pounds, and he did the plot. He's like, I'm pretty sure I gained weight from brownies. I'm pretty sure I gained weight from pizza. Turns out that he was correct, but it also turned out that that 100% of the days that he slept over 7 hours, he lost weight, 100%. And only the next highest thing was 75% when he ate olive oil, he lost weight. When he ate eggs, he lost weight. And so instantly we said, don't even worry about diet at all. Just for the next 6 weeks, be in bed by 10 p.m. We can monitor that. We'll turn off your Wi-Fi automatically. And then he approved it. We said, okay, boom, he fell asleep at 10 and he lost 35 pounds effortlessly. So I thought I would do the same thing. And I ran my same correlative data against it with my Oura Ring. And I found out that when I sleep over 7 hours, I gain weight. And when I sleep over 7 hours, I lose productivity. When I sleep at 6, it's okay. But between 4 and 5 is my sweet spot, which was extremely different than any sleep study I've ever read. Why We Sleep, the book, was totally different. But as I monitored it first passively in retrospect and now presently with intention, it's pretty clear the patterns that happen. And so I think that the wearable devices give you the first access of not just once per day measurements, but also continuous data sources that allow correlation to actually change. You don't care if the keto diet makes 15% of people with statistical significance lose weight. You care if the keto diet makes you lose weight, right?
Exactly.
That's all you care about. So why would you care about A/B test studies when for the first time ever we can do regression studies on yourself?
But if you've got 100 million people who have gathered that data, then you might be able to more accurately identify who are the groups.
Maybe, but yeah, you can build models. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't think anybody here would ever believe that 4 to 5 hours would make me lose weight. Like
yeah, right.
That's really interesting.
Right. And so, and the second thing I just wanted to say before we switch off this topic is the really, really, really fascinating thing about wearable tech, which is crazy, which is that every other product in the entire world that exists, as far as I can find, you have to put it on. With wearable tech, the customer is yours until they take it off. It's like an opt-out on a driver's license for organ donors. And what I mean is that when you look at it from this perspective, you say even a t-shirt you got to put on, right? Even electricity, you got to plug something into the socket to spend it. Like every other product in the world, I still can't find anything else. Maybe I guess internal medical devices are the only other ones. But you have to continuously get the user to do something. But with the other product, with hardware or with the wearables, you're able to strap something on the user and all you got to do is convince them not to take it off, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can if you can increase battery life, most importantly, make it chargeable while it's on their wrist and to make it waterproof, you solve for a humongous issue. And if you can get them to wear your product for about 7 days for 23 plus hours a day, you have a customer who's effortlessly yours. So I find that to be really, really powerfully interesting because no other market does that. But apart from that, wearable tech, I think, well, anyway, I think that's
and don't underestimate the importance of battery life. What kept Fitbit competitive against Apple was the fact that they had really long battery life compared to Apple Watches, which were dying within a day.
100%.
It can really affect.
It still is dying within a day.
Yeah.
The Apple Watch, isn't it crazy? It makes no sense.
Not the least of my concerns, but yeah, it is an issue.
Oh, I think about it every day for at least an hour. It's ridiculous.
As I sit here with an Apple Watch on my wrist.
I mean, I sell an Apple Watch accessory that you have to wear to sleep.
No,
it's ridiculous. I got to convince users to charge their product during the day, their Apple during the day, so they can wear my product at night. It's ridiculous.
No, great points by all of you. And thank you so much for all of your insight. Kind of jumping off a topic that we touched on a little bit. So we mentioned kind of a few of the potential advantages and disadvantages, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about some advantages in the realm of remote patient monitoring, patient education and engagement. And just in general, I know a lot of people increasingly nowadays have become more worried about data privacy and security. So how would you think all of those you can pick whichever one you want to discuss, because I know those are a bunch of very big topics, but what do you see as your products or everything you've seen in wearable tech playing into all of those realms?
Well, I don't have statistics. I know that there's some anecdotal evidence to suggest that a lot of Fitbit users were quite concerned when Google bought out Fitbit for, I think, $2.1 billion, because a lot of people aren't necessarily keen to have an AI conglomerate monitoring their heart and health data. And this is also a concern, obviously, do we really want to be integrating our data with electronic medical record systems when we don't really own that data? It would be nice, from my perspective, if I could pool my electronic medical record system and own that data and own my own tracking data and own my own genome without having to worry that it was going to be used for nefarious purposes to gain insights about me or my relatives, because they're genetically similar too, right? So certainly privacy is a big issue. I also think we should say something about just the fact that right now, a lot of these systems, for all their ability to monitor vitals, they are still quite inaccurate, and that could also lead to some challenges and issues.
Yeah, we really focus on delivering value to our end users. The value is really the thermal sensation. The thermal sensation is doing things like balancing the autonomic nervous system. It's helping with menopausal hot flashes. If you know anything about that, the only standard of care for women in menopause is to take hormone replacement therapy, which can be very dangerous for a lot of women. Women in menopause, they will have 20 to 30 hot flashes a day for up to 10 years, and there's really no solution. So when we look at the population of users that are finding benefit from the device, we focus on that, and then we're able to collect real world evidence about how people are using the device and for which therapeutic applications. And then what we do is we work with our chief medical officer to say, how do we optimize what we're delivering, the thermal waveforms for a particular patient or consumer, by diving into the science and making that waveform even better for that particular application. So we don't spend a lot of time pulling a lot of data. We focus on aggregation of data that improves the haptic itself.
How do you detect if it's working without any sensors? Are you surveying your users to ask them if it was beneficial, or what do you do?
Well, we do have sensors. So we do have a environmental sensor, and we have a skin temperature sensor. Okay. And we can also track whether they're using the device. So we've already logged over 77 million minutes of heating and cooling. And then we collect demographic data, and so we can see who's using which method at which time of day. And then we've already started with a goal tracking feature where people tell us why they're using the device and what the improvement levels are over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. We were able to show that the device is more effective than menopausal women taking an off-label antidepressant for hot flashes. So statistically better than a pharmaceutical. And our ultimate goal is to show that we're better than hormone replacement therapy for menopausal hot flashes.
I think one of the issues is that I mean, there are companies like United Health Group who are now supporting the idea of having opt-in offerings where I think they've partnered with both Apple and Fitbit, for example, to offer devices. And I think a lot of the concern is that on the one hand, yes, it might provide a way of providing proactive care, coordinated care. On the other hand, the long-term concern is that health companies might be able to use this information to segregate the marketplace, to possibly identify you maybe as a poor insurance risk, to deny you coverage, or to affect your premiums.
Yeah, that's a huge risk, right? It's nice to come at this to just deliver value and then
yes,
focus on that. And we have started as a gadget, right? That we didn't make any claims. We didn't say what the product was good for. We had the users tell us what this is good for. And now we're more and more seen as a digital therapeutic. And the difference between us is that we solved the user adoption problem first. People paid $300 out of their pocket for the device. They told us why they were using it. If you look at other digital therapeutics company, they start with the clinical validation, and then they have to solve the problem of user adoption.
right.
So we went the other way. And when we talk to investors and they say, where's your clinical validation? We say, okay, yeah, that's running, right? We've got that running. It will be ready in a while. But just look at the fact that people are paying $300 for it and giving us testimonials that it has, quote unquote, changed their life. That is way more powerful than any clinical evidence. And I'm really happy to hear that even pharmaceutical companies and the FDA are changing their tune and looking at things like real world evidence and patient reported outcomes more than, sham trials.
I think it's kind of interesting that a lot of medical device companies, in particular like Fitbit and Apple, they will tout certain technical features of their devices as if they are medical device-like. But you have to remember these are not FDA approved as medical devices. And in some cases, like for example, monitoring the heart rate carefully opens up the possibility for detecting arrhythmias. The one that's often been cited is like atrial fibrillation. And yet, if you read the fine print of Apple's warranty agreement, they will say specifically, you're not supposed to use this if you have AFib. And there was a very funny, I don't know if it's funny, but there was an interesting article in the Washington Post. It was basically a review of the Apple Watch 6 that just came out. I think this was yesterday. And basically the guy was saying, hey, sometimes my watch thinks that I'm an Olympic athlete because they have like a pulse oxygen meter in the device now. Sometimes it thinks I'm an Olympic swimmer, and sometimes it thinks I'm dying of emphysema. And I think part of the concern here is that, yeah, it's really neat and interesting that we have these increasing number of techniques for monitoring different kinds of vitals, but a personal concern of mine might be that their inaccuracy is questionable, and that they might lead to a false sense of security.
Well, what's interesting about that is companies like Apple are able to get away with it, but a small startup would never be able to get away with that, right?
No, I think a small startup can get away with a lot more. I've seen like, I went to CVS last year, and there was fidget spinners and it said, great for ADHD. I'm like, no, you can't say that. That's ridiculous. But I was like, wait, can I say that? Is my product vegan? Like, I think it's vegan. Like, I didn't make any harming animals. Can I just throw that terminology? I think a lot of the words about privacy and all this stuff is really dependent on, it's like if you use the word influence or manipulation, it's the same word, but the way that people perceive it is very different. You know what I mean? And like, when I look at habit change, habits never work unless you let other people see your data, right? It never works unless you have accountability. That's just a fundamental shift. And so like the word privacy is important because it has weight on it. And accountability has a different kind of weight on it. And so, but they're the same thing. And depending on how you define it, obviously there's a difference in those two terms, but like, so for us, it's interesting battle, because the first thing that people ask us is like, how does it know? Which is like, what data does it track is the question. And then the second thing is, what is the privacy standards? I don't want this data shared. I'm like, do you want good tracking or do you not want good tracking? Like, what do you want? Like, do you want, you want not to have access to IFTTT? You don't want any data broadcasted, but you want it also to sense stuff from the internet and deliver stimuli. You can't have that both ways. It just doesn't work. And so like, we've been finding very, very much so that it's all about the way you frame it. But what's really important is you actually come from a good place. Like Facebook, like in my opinion, like tried to come from a good place, but they're so stuck in their business model that they're stuck with this term of selling data, which is different than like, and similar to Google, but Google's got off scot-free because it's not about the act of personal tracking, but it's the act of search tracking. So they get away a little bit with it. But then there's people like Elon Musk, who I'm a big fan of. And I'm sure you guys have seen the meme, but if you haven't, there's a meme where it's like, Bill Gates, I'm going to give a vaccine to people across the world. Oh, he's going to inject a microchip in my brain. And then Elon Musk is like, I'm literally going to inject a microchip in your brain. And people are like, haha, Elon, right? Because he's not weird, because he's cool and he comes from a good place. Like, that's it.
Pretty weird.
Yeah, I mean, when I say weird, I mean like Bill Gates is awkward. It's painful to watch him, and Zuckerberg is so awkward it hurts. But like when you watch Elon, you're like, oh man, what's his meme gonna be today? You know, like what's he gonna say that's gonna be like rude? Oh, who's he gonna call a pedophile? Who's he gonna do it? And it's like, and so I'm like, and so I find that really funny because it really, like, privacy is important, but really what's important is the user's expectations. And like, if you solve for being like, companies can't win unless you see the founder. They can't at scale. They get eaten up by privacy concerns. Tech companies get eaten up by privacy concerns unless you can see the founder's face. And if you look at these days, like, why is Jeff Bezos not in the media? Why is Zuckerberg? Well, Zuckerberg is too weird. Like Bill Gates, I don't know what they're just so odd. And it's like, but the ones who ever were successful doing the stuff that's way worse than today, are they setting the stage for what's happening today, is clearly like Steve Jobs, right? Like, he invented all the stuff that created this, but he's so cool to watch. So I think that, like, the problems that, like, I don't know, it's like the problems that are happening here are all really not real problems. They're real problems, but it's really a matter of like stating of like, it's a rhetoric issue. And so I find that really, really fascinating because there is no way to solve it at all. You just have to be cool, I think. That's it. I don't know. I'm done. My rant on privacy.
Definitely great insight on that point. I don't know how to follow that up with my next question because it's a little bit deeper, but I'm going to pivot a little bit just because I'm actually really interested to hear your take on this question. So given COVID and also just like the state of the world currently, there have been a lot of health inequities and disparities that have been brought more into the light. Not that they haven't existed previously, but more just that more people are kind of recognizing it and seeing it on a firsthand basis. So from your perspective, what are some ways in which we can work to minimize health inequities in the digital health world? It doesn't have to specifically be within wearable tech, but just there's a lot of accessibility issues within it. Not everyone has access to Wi-Fi. Not everyone has access to the privilege of buying things like such as wearable technology. So how would you kind of say that that can be resolved through the help of digital health?
So I did a TEDx talk called Money, the Greatest Story Ever Told. And it speaks directly to this question, which is exactly the question of how do we fix inequities across the world, tactically and actually. And it's the stated mission of our company that by the time I die, that everybody in the entire world will be able to earn at least $1,000 a month by hitting the big 6 healthy habits. And that is, I mean, it's like drinking water, sleeping on time, meditation, exercise, eating healthy, and one other one, eating right. And so the way that I believe that this is possible is, like, if you watch the TEDx talk, it's a lot better, and I won't sound as crazy. But in general, if you look at the actual quantity of money in the world, ever since 1970, it's been increasing at the speed of Moore's law. The day we went off the gold standard, the quantity of money supply started to double every 18 months. And right now it doubles even faster. And if you look at the actual amount of cash dollars in the world, there's about, I think, about 4 trillion US dollars of cash printed in the world. And just in the last 18 months, there was 1.4 quadrillion dollars of derivatives created in the world. And that's like something like 32,000 times the amount of actual cash money. And it was printed just in the last 18 months, right? That money's not even real. It doesn't exist, but it creates massive, interesting influences upon the world. But it's also like a very obvious problem that it's the obvious end of late stage capitalism, which is like, if you create a system in which we created a system where you get paid when other people want you to do things, right? That's what money is today. You get paid when other people want you to do something. That system works as long as you have a scarcity economy. But the day that the poorer you are, the fatter you are, that's the day where we no longer live in a scarcity economy. That's the day where we live in an abundance economy. And the problem is no longer wealth. The problem is actually distribution, right? And the big fundamental problem is that the way that we think about money itself is that you are paid by what other people want you to do. But right now we're in a situation where you should be paid for doing the things you want yourself to do. You should earn money for doing the habits that actually make you positive or make you a beneficial person, right? And so we have a physical structure. It's like a 15-year plan. I have a white paper. I'm happy to send anybody. But the basic core of it comes down into allowing people to, I mean, I could talk about this for hours. I won't talk about this for too long because I know the people are speaking. But like the fundamentals of it come down to how do you get people, how do you first of all create a company in which you live? So how do you solve for existence? How do you solve for survival? If you can solve for survival with customers, you're in a good place. Next, you solve for thrival. How do you create awesome, excellent products that start driving people to want to use your system, right? Third, how do you create a system of gamification that is obvious in every game? How do you create in-app points that make you continue to want to come into the ecosystem and then use those points across the ecosystems, right? How do you get people to want these points, use these points, spend these points, and create things worth these points? And once those, and the word points is easily replaceable by the word dollar, right? How do you get people to create an app store economy? Once you have a basic app store economy where you're a buyer and a seller, now you can create really interesting financial systems. Just like a Fed is able to increase or decrease inflation by slowing or speeding up the speed of money, you can do the same thing within any virtual economy by allowing people to buy into a system, but having time delays on withdrawing from a system, or having investments that accrue interest as long as they're in the system. The same thing as a bank, right? A bank actually creates money out of thin air. If you and I own a bank and you put $1,000 in the bank, that bank can now lend out $9,000 to me, and I can lend out 8,100 to them. And in less than 10 transactions, we can create almost $1 trillion out of thin air. It's magic. And so so it's the fractional reserve system. So long story short, what I'm getting at here is that I believe that we will solve this problem, because it is the only problem that I'm trying to solve. And we will solve it through doing through a system of allowing people in any ecosystem to be able to earn small amounts of points by simply downloading an app, and then be able to unlock larger amounts of points by paying money. And that money is used to redistribute money to the people who need it the most, who are then able to download the app and upsell into buying products that allow them to earn that currency. That's it.
Well, that's a hard act to follow.
Yeah. I think, I was just going to say, we live in a country where basically if you pay more for healthcare, you get better healthcare. And you're going to have inequities in healthcare as long as you have inequities in income. And or until you're willing to, maybe have a kind of healthcare system that doesn't reward necessarily access by virtue of your ability to pay for it. And this is part and parcel why so many people are keen to do what other countries do and have universal healthcare. But I think you have some systemic issues about why people aren't willing to give up their healthcare. If they have employer-funded healthcare and they're happy with their healthcare system, then screw everyone else. I think that's I think some fundamental attitudes need to change across the board in healthcare in order to fundamentally address those big issues.
It needs to change for sure. I mean, it's like the same as the education. Sorry.
I was just going to say, but one of the areas where there is just, even if you are talking about just the United States, the state of healthcare for women is just crazy. So imagine before Obamacare, just being a woman was a pre-existing condition.
It's also applied to medical research as well, right? In terms
imagine
of
what does that mean? What does that mean?
It means that before Obamacare, if you were a woman, you had a pre-existing condition that you would become pregnant. And so you were treated as someone with a pre-existing condition of being female. That was the state of things before Obamacare, who got rid of that.
Does that mean that premiums were higher for women?
Yes. Premiums were higher for women, and so were the costs associated with just being a woman, right? The same thing still happens today. Do you know that a tampon is a medical device? It is considered a medical device, but we still pay taxes on it. Yet for erectile dysfunction drugs or drugs that are available for men to regrow their hair, those can be purchased tax-free. Right. By the time a woman goes into menopause, she has already outlaid about $20,000 just because of menstruation, because of a biological need of 50% of the population. By the time a woman has had children, left work, had to go through breastfeeding, taken time off of work, she's in the hole about $1 million compared to her male counterpart. So what we're trying to do is address disparities in healthcare by giving a new technology for women, especially those that are at the top of their game in their 50s and 60s, who now start to go through menopause, and it's so debilitating that they leave the workforce when they're at vice president, CEO levels. So imagine you've spent your whole career, you've laid out all the money to menstruate, you've left the workforce to have babies for guess who? The other 50% of the population, right? And now you finally hit your stride, you're a vice president in a corporation and you're having 20 hot flashes a day, you're not sleeping at night, you're having associated anxiety with it, and it becomes a vicious circle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liz, for highlighting that. I think it's super important to kind of mention and bring up because it is something that not everyone thinks about and definitely a big part of the health inequity side of things. I'm going to pivot a little bit to get these questions in the chat answered. There's a lot of curiosity over, I think, Liz and Maneesh, both of your products. So if you wanted to go a little bit into detail of how exactly does the device work? And I know you kind of answered a few of these, but if you want to give like an overarching kind of explanation of how everything just kind of works.
Yeah, certainly. So this is the device. This is what we call a minimum viable product. It's the first generation. We've sold over 65,000 of these devices, only from our own website in the United States, but we know that the product is in 165 countries. So people are paying $300 for this, shipping it someplace in the US and then shipping it abroad again. So I think that really speaks to the demand of this type of technology. What we do is we deliver either a cold or a warm sensation out of this thermoelectric to the subcutaneous thermoreceptors, which you have a concentration of warm and cool thermoreceptors here in your wrist. And essentially, by stimulating those thermoreceptors, we're hacking the brain, mostly in the insular cortex, to help balance the autonomic nervous system. So a menopausal hot flash is not a temperature problem. It is actually an overactivation of your sympathetic nervous system. So if you're a man sitting in this room or a woman who's never experienced a hot flash, I can tell you how you can imagine what it feels like. Think about the last time you were incredibly startled. Somebody scared you or you had a near-miss accident in your vehicle. The feeling you get of that rush of heat into your body, the hair standing up on the back of your neck and the tingling in your fingers, that is an overactivation of your sympathetic nervous system or your fight or flight response. Women in menopause are having that experience about 20 times a day for about 10 years, interrupting daily quality of life. So what we're able to do in that example is by using a cold sensation, we're able to interrupt that we can override the overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system.
Great, thank you. And Maneesh, do you want to touch a little bit about your product and kind of how it works? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, definitely. I need to hire another CEO like Elizabeth who can describe my product. Holy shit, I can't describe my product at all. It's like, I don't even know what it does. It's impossible to explain. I'm like, are we making a device that like breaks bad habits, helps you quit smoking? And then the whole last week I programmed 3 games that it lets you like have a rumble pack in VR. So when you're firing guns in VR, it vibrates your wrist. And then when you have low health, it goes and beeps loudly. And I'm like, God damn it, Maneesh, stop focusing on this. You're doing it again. So at the end of the day, what we do is we make a product that's super simple, right? It vibrates, beeps, and releases electrical stimuli when told to. The secret is that when you send in specific frequencies, you can create different sensations. That's pretty cool. If you've ever used a TENS device, that's like the FDA-approved product for pain management, but off-label, you can use it to build six-pack abs, they say. It's not working for me. But anyway, so the same product is, because that same product is a massager, right? So this electrical stimuli can create vibration, touch, squeeze, in a lot of ways, warmth and heat, although not really. And I'd like to talk to Elizabeth about that later because it'd be awesome to talk about that later.
Yeah, we should.
But for sure, so the main core of it is we created a product, and that product receives information into what we call the sensor core. So you integrate all of your other apps and services like Apple Health, Aura, etc., and it integrate, and then the device itself has sleep tracking, step tracking, motion, hand motion detection, and a few other things. And then all of that integrates into a server that we call the sensor core. Now, assuming you approve all this and you accept our privacy requests and everything, and you say you want this done, What we do is we run a correlation against all that information to generate an output that says, okay, what is your end goal? If your end goal is weight loss, or your end goal is to sleep better, or your end goal is whatever dependent variable you might have. From that it gives us a beautiful correlation of exactly the things that cause that to happen and exactly the things that cause that not to happen. What we do right now is we tell you that, and then we say, okay, based on the information, would you like to accept notifications at the right time? And so, your sleep was bad this morning, and we found that you tend to gain weight on these days. And that means you're probably going to be snacking around, 1 to 1:57 p.m., especially right when you stand up at that time. Why not get a push notification that says, hey, you might be hungry. Would you like instead to do this beautiful sleep meditation or this beautiful lunchtime meditation? Right? How about we take a walk and go this point? We'll give you double volts if you go this point. That's our currency. You earn extra points if you take a walk, right? And so what we try to do is identify based on correlations exactly what things will cause it to work, then send you a notification at that time, and then watch it happen. But that experiment is not as successful as the one we've been recently running, which is where we don't tell you what the correlation is, where we just tell you that, like, hey, just follow the instructions and it'll work. And for some reason, people do that more. And then we start doing these weird things where you start doubling it up. Anyway, so that's all on the software side. But yeah, so basically there's a data algorithm that we use. Then from there, what we've been doing recently is we hooked it up to your Apple Watch, so now it sits and lives on the device, right? So now whenever you can program it however you want, and you unlock capabilities the more you use it. So when you start off, you only have the ability to track how long you wear it for, and that's it. And then after 3 days, you unlock the next track habit slot, and you can choose to track your sleep or track your steps. And the more you do, the more slots you unlock, right? And the more slots you unlock, the more points you get. And the more points you get, the more different activities, behaviors, VR games, systems you earn. And so that's basically how we work. We basically focus on this idea of track what you're doing, provide notifications at the right time to help you assist with that doing, but don't give it all to them. Don't sleep with the person on the first date, right? Like don't do that because they're not going to want you later. It's the same style. It's like if you give people everything on day one, then it just fucking sucks. So that's kind of what we do.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that I know Maneesh and Liz, you answered a little bit in the chat was, how are you able to drive demand for your relatively niche products? So you both kind of mentioned that you drove traffic by first building your audience a little bit organically, then press and media, and then word of mouth, which is great. The second part of that question was more geared towards, have you ever thought about pairing your products or services with some sort of disease management or coaching platform? And Professor Rachlin, please feel free to tune in about any products you've seen that have been in this realm, and if you think that they've been useful or anything of that nature.
Well, I would just say from my time at Fitbit, I know the big order of business was all about engagement, and they were doing pretty much what Maneesh was doing as well, tweaking the system, doing A/B testing, tweaking the interface, constantly changing the patterns of interaction and testing it on some subpopulation of your users and figuring out what's the most engaging, what's the most addictive, what's the most sort of gaming the system, earning points, earning friends, creating competitive environments with your friends. This is what these device companies do. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it's just how they try to maximize engagement, and they need to, because very often, well, I can't speak for our other guests, but I know Fitbit had this issue where a person would buy a Fitbit and then 6 months later, they probably wouldn't be using it anymore, or at least a good fraction of them wouldn't be using it anymore.
Sorry, guys, I have to take off. I've got a call with Asia, but this was delightful, and I put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me, and loved meeting Maneesh and John. So let's stay in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I forgot what the question was.
Oh. The question was, have you ever thought about pairing your product or services with some sort of disease management or coaching platform?
Yeah, so first step before that, I wanted to say, don't forget about the fact that both of us said paid ads. Like that, like we wouldn't exist without paid ads. So paid ads are the way that you can get at least like if you can't succeed in paid ads, you can't win anyway. So the second question was like, have we ever considered partnering? And then I think that John brought up something around people not replacing it, or something around pricing strategies. Maybe I just imagined that.
No, you
And so the first part of that was about partnerships. Yes, obviously we've started partnering by creating a mount, right? So in my company, we have a core company value, which is never attack, always attach. My theory is that the way to win in business is like an amoeba or a white blood cell. You ever see white blood cells fight? Like they start to surround the creature, they start to surround the pathogen until like it just gets surrounded and absorbed, right? We're never going to win against Apple if we go and create another wearable device. It's not going to fucking happen, right? There's no chance that like everyone's going to replace their Apple Watch with a Pavlok. And even though I feel naked without it on both wrists, not everyone wore a Pavlok for 6 years because they had to. So like at that point, you have to solve for how do you win these games. And to me, the answer is never attack, always attach. So the way we started off by doing this is we've created what we call the Sensor Core platform. And that's where we accept any sort of, I guess these are all consumer products. But we accept consumer products as inputs into our system. And we're not competing against Aura. Now all of our ads say, are you an Aura user? Get deeper insights into your data, create a free account here, right? Like the system, that's the ring on my wrist. Yeah, the smart ring. Yeah, I found out that the less I weigh, the faster I fall asleep, would have thought. Yeah, and so from that, it's like with medical devices in particular, I think there's a humongous space for, okay, it's like, it's unethical almost, not almost, it is unethical how much it costs for buying products, right? And it doesn't cost that much to make. So for example, if I want to get like, one of the most common disorders in America is, I don't know, it's not disorder, but it's toenail fungus, trichomasis or something, right? 40% of adults have it, and it's like there's a new treatment which is like a laser treatment, right? And they're like, it's FDA regulated to treat it, but if you read the FDA regulations, number one, it reduces it while you use it, right? And how much does it cost? Well, it costs $1,000 for 3 sessions, right? And how much does the device cost? $17,000, right? And how much does it cost to buy a one-off label? Like $800. How much does it cost to make one? Like 110, right? And so why the hell am I going to pay $1,000 to get 3 treatments on a device which will not work after those 3 treatments for a product that costs $17,000? It's all a scam for 40% of Americans, right? It's all a fucking scam when you can just make these products. You can literally buy the off labels on eBay for $800. So what I see is a huge opportunity is understanding that hardware has never been easier. It's not easy, but like I'm stupid and I can do it. And so like it's doable. And like the fact is, like if you take medical devices right now that cost between 20,000 plus, and you say, how can I make this smaller and portable and a rental model? And you take that and you simply drop the price from $20,000 to direct to consumer $99 to $299 per month. And you say, we mail you the product for you to use it and you cancel it by mailing it back. This has been a humongous change for us. Because we said, what if we offered a rental service where you receive the product and you cancel it by mailing it back? Well, it helps if you, it has a really, really, really surprisingly effective, it drops cost to acquire a customer, it drops churn ridiculously low. It creates, it has really interesting side effects. But at the end of the day, when we started offering a small, quiet rental model for Pavlok, $30 a month, cancel it by mailing it back, our average order value, our average lifetime value of the customer doubled instantly. And it's a consistent, sustainable, recurring revenue model. And these people, it blows my mind, but they use it every day. It's not like they forgot to cancel it. Most of them still use it every day. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy. I would never have expected that. Because like anyway, it's crazy how that happens. So I think that like in general, there's a really big, powerful future of exactly that.
Thank you. So we're just about over with our allotted time slot for today, but thank you both so much for coming and speaking with us. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure the rest of our student audience also greatly enjoyed it. We recorded today's session, so we'll be sure to post it, and I'll be sure to send it to you as well as Liz. I put in the chat a link to our newsletter as well as our Slack, so be sure to join that if you're not already there. And our next event is actually going to be next Thursday, October 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. And if you're interested at all about digital health even more, then please come to that event. We're going to bring in Dr. Graham Gardner from Kairos Health, who has a lot of great insight about starting a startup and just kind of working in that realm. So we hope to see you all there. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming today.
All right, thank you.
Yes, and if anybody's interested in running their own correlative data to create that sensor core data set, just shoot me an email and I'll hook it up for you so you guys can see exactly what makes you gain weight, lose weight, etc. I'll put my email in there now. Just type in Zoom is slow and everyone already left, so who cares? See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Pleasure.